Storm Eunice hits the UK with powerful winds causing injury, damage and disruption. Coastal areas in the south were buffeted by gusts and huge waves, with people urged to be cautious.
I don't know what the actual wind speed is, but you can barely stand up in it.
I'm literally at a 45-degree angle. It's crazy.
The gale-force winds pulled down trees, tore through buildings and caused extensive damage in parts of the country. There were bumpy landings and relief for some.
It's been a day of chaos here on the railways too, with delays, cancellations and trees on the line.
The red alert danger to life warnings have now been lifted, but much of the country remains on alert for severe weather, also tonight. As Russian drills continue near Ukraine, the US says Russia has built up the most significant military force in Europe since World War II.
Wow! Great Britain are in the final!
And success for the women's curling team at the Beijing Winter Olympics, meaning a second guaranteed medal for Team GB.
And coming up on the BBC News Channel, Lewis Hamilton says he wants to come back stronger next season, ending doubts over his immediate future in the sport following last season's controversial end to the title race.
Good evening. Large parts of the UK have been battered by one of the worst storms in decades, with major damage to buildings and millions of people being advised to stay at home as Storm Eunice hit. 2 rare red weather warnings, meaning a danger to life, were issued but have now passed. There is still a serious amber warning in place for a large part of England until 9 p.m. and less severe yellow alerts for snow and ice in northern England and Scotland. The strongest gust of wind, a blistering 122 miles per hour, was recorded on the Isle of Wight at an exposed point of the island. The storm has brought widespread disruption with flight and train cancellations, school closures, power cuts in some areas and major bridges being closed. Our first report tonight is from our correspondent Danny Savage in Bristol.
In Bude this morning, a local landmark toppled.
Oh my God, I caught that on video!
As Storm Eunice swept in from the Atlantic, the water was whipped into huge waves and coastal areas saw the highest gusts.
I don't know what the actual wind speed is, but you can barely stand up in it. So I'm guessing it's 80, 90 miles an hour on top of the cliff.
The sea state along the south coast was frightening. By lunchtime, 10% of homes in Cornwall were without power, and the Isle of Wight had recorded a gust of 122 miles per hour.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, it's falling over. Oh my gosh, whoa, oh my gosh, no. Okay, it's okay, it's not, nobody's hurt and it hasn't hurt it's just hurt the brand new fence. Whoa. Whoa.
And it wasn't just trees falling. That's the spire of St Thomas's Church in Wells being destroyed. Near Bristol, a speed limit on the M4 Prince of Wales Bridge wasn't enough to keep traffic moving.
For what's thought to be the first time ever, both bridges here across the Severn Estuary are closed because of the high winds. But the severe flood warnings here have now expired. Thankfully, the worst case scenario wasn't realised.
Temporary flood defences were not tested, but authorities say it isn't over yet.
On the back of this, we've got more rain coming, so there could be possibilities of further flooding as the week pans out. So let's get today out of the way first, then let's make sure that all of our infrastructure, all of our defences are still in good shape.
As the day wore on, the storm headed east. For the first time ever, the southeast of England and London were also in a red warning area.
To see these strong winds inland across the south, where we just don't see them that often, that has been one of the biggest factors with Storm Eunice. One of the good things about the storm is the speed at which it's actually moved through. So it zipped through pretty smartly. But all storms are different. They all offer different things. But this one has been particularly intense. Red warnings are rare. To have 2 out at the same day is exceptional.
Gosh, it's pretty rough.
In London, the wind ripped off the roof of the O2 Arena. It left a gaping hole. 1,000 people had to be evacuated from the site. The north of England and Scotland escaped the worst of the storms, but did get some heavy snow. This morning's rush hour was difficult, but things have now improved. The Humber Bridge, though, was another crossing closed unusually to all traffic rather than just high-sided vehicles. Storm Eunice will be remembered for its mountainous seas and wind damage. There were fears it could have been much worse.
Well, conditions have improved since earlier. The M4 bridge here over into Wales has got traffic moving over it again, and I think for many areas it's now the recovery phase. Devon, Cornwall, Kent, Suffolk, places where there have been lots of power cuts. The aim, of course, is to get many of those people reconnected as soon as possible. Worth noting as well what the Environment Agency said, to keep an eye on the weather over the next 3 days. More wind and rain expected, but not as bad as it has been today, Rita.
Danny, thank you. Well, in Wales, all train services were cancelled for the first time ever. The majority of schools were closed and tens of thousands of homes were left without power. Our correspondent Thomas Morgan has been speaking to some of those in the worst affected areas.
The sound will never, ever leave me. It was just heartbreaking to hear my daughter screaming.
Just before lunchtime in Newport, South Wales, Holly Price's house buckled under pressure from Storm Eunice, all as 5-year-old daughter Olivia was playing upstairs.
Opened the door, I could see all the houses, the roofs were hanging off, and grabbed my daughter and managed to grab any clothes that we could that we had on and just take her outside.
3 homes condemned for now on this street, but thankfully nobody was injured. Elsewhere, the seaside town of Porthcawl also felt the impact, the majority of its coastline businesses having to shut.
The seafront here in Porthcawl really bore the brunt of the weather here this morning, as within an hour of the red warning coming into force, it coincided with high tide, meaning the waves came crashing over the promenade here.
I've lived in Porthcawl many, many years, and I've never experienced it like this before. It's even taken my breath away, it's so windy.
Stronger than we've seen for a long time. You know, the lack of rain is a big help, but I haven't seen a wind as strong as this for a while.
At its peak this morning, gusts of over 90 miles per hour were clocked as Eunice turned over anything and everything in its path. For the first time ever today, all trains were cancelled as a precaution. Most schools also made the decision to close. Half-term started a day earlier than planned. Over 40,000 homes have been without power across the country, and although the Met Office's red warning ended lunchtime, the whole of Wales is now under an amber alert for wind until this evening, and the advice remains to stay indoors and to only travel if absolutely necessary. Thomas Morgan, BBC News, South Wales.
Well, in other parts of the country, it's been snow that's the issue. Our correspondent Dan Johnson is near Alston in Cumbria for us now. Dan.
Yes, it's really cold, it's wet, windy, it's wild up here on the Pennines this evening. The wind has just got stronger and stronger throughout the day, and there has been quite a bit of snow, hail and ice that's been proving a problem for drivers as well. So the roads have largely been quiet, though there have still been people out. Disruption on the trains as well. There's concern about the roof of Preston Station. Ferries in the Irish Sea have been disrupted, and there are power lines that are down already across the north. More than 1,000 homes in the northwest that are without power at the moment. So disruption still being caused, and another difficult night in store, perhaps into tomorrow. And would you believe it, on the Wirral this afternoon, the Coast Guard had to tell 3 people not to go swimming in the sea.
Goodness. Dan Johnson, thank you very much. Well, Storm Eunice has also caused travel chaos across the country. Planes have struggled to land at airports, and gale force winds have brought trees down on railway lines. Well, our correspondent Emma Simpson is at Waterloo Station in London for us now. And Emma, how disrupted have services been?
fair to say, Rita, this has been quite a day on the transport front. The sheer scale of disruption, it's been hard to keep up. Now, tonight, for instance, here at Waterloo, all services are still suspended. Network Rail saying they're checking routes to make sure that they're clear of debris, that the trains are safe to run. And that's because you've just been saying loads of trees have been blown onto the tracks. Travelling into a storm, stomach-churning landings from the skies. The going's rough for this car ferry too. On the roads, the wind too strong for this lorry, and chaos on the rails. A roof lands on the tracks at Banbury. The disruption from Storm Eunice has been far and wide. Even before the storm hit, all train services in Wales were cancelled. Here's why. Carmarthen Station roof on the platform. Services in the southwest badly disrupted too. Every train operator in England's been dealing with delays and cancellations.
Disruption on the scale is almost unprecedented. There are trees down all over England and Wales. We've got thousands of colleagues out working with chainsaws and other specialist kit, desperately trying to get the railway open as quickly as we can.
It's lunchtime here at London's Waterloo station. Trains were running and then suddenly every service has been suspended and every train en route has been told to pull into the nearest stop until the worst has passed.
So we're not going home by train today, no.
This group's trying to get home to Portsmouth after a birthday trip.
Well, I was supposed to come to uni this morning, but they sent an email 20 minutes before the lecture saying that there's no uni, so I'm here for no reason and now I can't get home. At Gatwick Airport, some planes aborted landings. Across the UK, more than 450 flights have been cancelled today. Jane Anson was en route here, but didn't make it.
The pilot came on again and said that there were no places to land in any of the other London airports. It wouldn't be possible to land there. They considered Amsterdam, but that was closed. They considered Edinburgh, but they said it was so snowy up there. So we turned around and came back to Bordeaux.
At Dover, ferry crossings also closed. The last boats to beat the storm tugged in to safety. As Storm Eunice passes through with all its force. Emma Simpson, BBC News.
Storm Eunice began life in the central Atlantic and was propelled towards Europe by the strong winds of the jet stream. Here's Helen Willits to explain more.
The computer models were actually hinting at this powerful storm just over a week ago, and it started right out here in the Atlantic. Just a tiny disturbance in our atmosphere, but enough for forecasters to spot that it looked like a powerful storm, and they named it Eunice, which is the 5th named storm this season and the 2nd named storm this week. And as it approached our shores, it underwent explosive cyclogenesis, a scary name, which basically means it picked up a lot of energy very rapidly. It's so tricky to compare storms, but Eunice has certainly been nasty. It looks like it has brought the highest gust of wind ever recorded in England, 122 miles an hour. But it's also exceptional because of the sheer extent of the warning area. So unusual to see virtually the whole of England and Wales under an amber wind warning. And it brought the first red warning to London and southeastern parts of England since the current system was brought in about 10 years ago. 80-mile-an-hour gusts of wind inland are a big deal. And for Scotland and Northern Ireland, it brought disruptive snow. It does seem likely, although there are no more named storms on the immediate horizon, the weekend remains wet and windy for many of us. We did have 4 named storms last year, 6 named storms in 2019, and if we get another one this winter, it'll be called Franklin.
The BBC's Helen Willits there. Well, to keep up to date with the situation where you live, you can listen to your BBC local radio station, and you can find details of your nearest station at bbc.co.uk/sounds. And for the picture across the country, head to bbc.co.uk news, where we will have live updates throughout the evening. The time is just coming up to 6:15. Our top story this evening. Storm Eunice has hit the UK, damaging properties and causing extensive travel disruption because of powerful winds. And it's just been confirmed that a woman has been killed by a falling tree in London. And coming up, a warning that children's health services must be prioritised as we emerge from the pandemic.
Coming up in Sports Day on the BBC News Channel, sprinter CJ Ujah has apologised for doping violations that have resulted in Team GB's men's 4x100 metre team being stripped of the silver medal they won at the Olympics in Tokyo last year.
US diplomats say that Russia has now amassed up to 190,000 personnel around the borders of Ukraine, calling it the most significant military mobilization in Europe since the Second World War. Moscow has repeatedly denied planning to invade Ukraine, but there are reports for a second day of shellfire in the east of the country, which is held by Russian-backed separatists. World leaders are meeting in Munich for a security conference, but Russia won't be attending for the first time in 2 decades. Our chief international correspondent Lise Doucet reports now from Munich.
The closest to war in Europe for years. These shots only fired in Russia's naval exercises in the Black Sea, but so close to Ukraine's southern coast and so much bigger than Ukraine's own fleet. A shot across the bow to Kiev. And a country now surrounded by Moscow's military might. On the northern border, another show of force. Exercises with Belarus. Today in Moscow, President Putin met the Belarusian leader, closest of friends. The long table used for visiting Western leaders is gone. President Putin tells him they'll both participate in new drills tomorrow and sends a message to NATO too.
I must state that these exercises are purely defensive in nature and do not threaten anyone.
A much different message here in Munich. US and NATO allies shoulder to shoulder, condemning what they call Russian aggression. No wonder Russia's foreign minister stayed away this year.
I think President Putin's been a little bit surprised at the way that NATO has come together. The European Union has come together. We've come together individually as partners. We come together institutionally. Either way, whichever path President Putin chooses, we'll be ready to respond.
One big question dominates this conference. Will Russia invade Ukraine again? The NATO Secretary General has seen the same intelligence as the US and British officials who believe it's imminent.
There's no certainty about the intentions of Russia.
But a high probability there could be something tomorrow, given what you've seen in the intelligence?
But what I think is very important now to just describe the facts. And the facts is that we have Russian armed forces amassed at the border of Ukraine that are ready to invade without any warning time. And that is a very dangerous situation.
A great danger lies here, eastern Ukraine, now a wasteland along Russia's border, where Russian-backed separatists exchange fire with Ukrainian forces. Last night shelling, some of the worst in years. Ukrainian troops inspect the damage here. Even a kindergarten got hit, each side blaming the other. NATO accuses Russia of seeking a pretext to attack. And Russia releases images like this to show it's pulling out its tanks, pulling away from this brink. But this crisis still teeters dangerously on the edge. Lise Doucet, BBC News, Munich.
Children's services across the UK must be prioritised as we emerge from the pandemic. That's the call from several major health charities. A report from the Nuffield Trust and the Health Foundation highlights growing waits for planned care, delays to cancer diagnoses and a surge in demand for mental health services in England. Our health correspondent Catherine Da Costa reports now on 2 families who've been affected.
Some days she couldn't walk. Getting angry, she was crying sometimes.
The children caught up in delays and disruption caused by the COVID pandemic.
Sometimes I just see tears rolling down his face, gone from the child he was to pretty much a recluse. He's more interested in your fingers.
8-year-old Thomas from Leeds was diagnosed with leukemia 3 years ago. His fortnightly hospital appointments moved to monthly video calls during the pandemic. His mother says without face-to-face checkups, problems with his bladder and liver weren't spotted.
It's like all this time in the back of my head, how long has this been going on? Would it have been detected sooner? Had he have been seen? As a mother, I want to take this pain away from him. I don't want to sit and watch him in this pain. But I can't do anything. I just feel completely helpless. Sorry.
As well as disruption to some cancer care, there's been unprecedented demand for children's mental health services. And the waiting list for planned hospital treatment grew to more than 300,000 in November. 1,000 young people waiting over 2 years.
Remember crutch first.
Every day's been a struggle for 13-year-old Keris from Nottingham. She has a condition which means one leg is longer than the other.
All right.
Last summer, she was put on a waiting list for an operation, but it was cancelled twice because of COVID.
Here you go, sweetheart.
I was really frustrated about the situation. I just want to be able to be normal and not have any pains in my legs.
Keris finally had the operation last month to fit a frame on her leg that will help it to grow. It's a relief it's all over. The last-minute cancellations caused a huge amount of anxiety.
There you go. The whole situation of this rebooking and cancelling, it's not fair on Keris. She was losing school days. I was losing work days, which I wasn't getting paid for.
In response to Thomas's case, Leeds Teaching Hospitals Trust told us it's committed to achieving timely and safe care for all patients. All 4 UK nations have said they'll continue to prioritise children's care with extra investment in both mental and physical health services. Catherine Da Costa, BBC News.
The government's weekly coronavirus figures show a continuing drop in the number of cases recorded. On average, 46,990 cases were recorded each day in the last week. Hospital admissions have also fallen, with an average of 11,555 patients being treated in hospital over the last 7 days. 158 deaths were reported in the latest 24-hour period. That's of people who died within 28 days of a positive test, although some will have died of other causes. On average this week, 147 deaths were announced every day. Well, Hugh Pym, our health editor, is here with me. Hugh, it's a big day on Monday with an announcement on the future of COVID restrictions in England. So what does this data point us towards?
Well, Rita, the group of scientific modellers who advise the SAGE group of experts published papers today showing projections of hospital admissions falling further through to the first week of March, perhaps half of where they are now, and daily reported deaths also falling. So government sources feel this is a pretty benign backdrop to the big announcement expected on Monday. Boris Johnson's already said that legal restrictions subject to the data will come to an end, including the legal requirement to self-isolate for anyone testing positive. But there's a big question over the future of free lateral flow tests. It seems highly likely a date will be set for when they will come to an end. That's not clear exactly when it'll be, and there will be protections for certain vulnerable groups to carry on getting free lateral flow tests. Now, ministers feel this is an essential move to opening up and living with COVID, but there was a warning today from NHS leaders and some scientific modellers that if you try and do too much, ending isolation and testing all at once, then the virus could yet pick up again.
Thank you very much. Hugh Pym there. Great Britain have been officially stripped of the silver medal that they won in the men's 4x100 metre relay at last year's Tokyo Olympics. It comes after the sprinter CJ Ujah, who ran the first leg of the relay, was found to have failed a drugs test. The 27-year-old says he unknowingly consumed a contaminated substance, and the situation is one that he will regret for the rest of his life. At the Winter Olympics in Beijing, Team GB is guaranteed another medal after the women's curlers followed the men's team and also won their semi-final match, beating the reigning champions Sweden. Meanwhile, the head of the International Olympic Committee has said that he was very disturbed by the way the 15-year-old Russian figure skater Kamila Valieva was treated by her coach after she fell several times during her final yesterday. Andy Swiss reports now from the Games.
They've done it! For Britain's curlers, another day of elation and emotion. A guaranteed medal and a place in the final. But goodness, what drama.
No, but like what a moment. It sounds amazing to say that we're in the Olympic final.
Well, what a breathtaking talent Eileen Gu is, and what delight for the host nation. And with her second gold medal here in Beijing, she's proving...
To help her. You could feel this chilling atmosphere.
Thomas Bach added he was very disturbed by Valieva's performance. The pressure is beyond my imagination.
Back now to our main story, Storm Eunice. And as the worst of the storm hit Britain, thousands were glued to Big Jet TV, which is a live YouTube stream of planes trying to land at Heathrow, with commentary from aviation enthusiast Jerry Dyer. Our correspondent David Silito has more.
It has been, shall we say, an interesting day to be an air passenger flying into Heathrow.
Easy. Go on, son. Oh.
And watching it all and providing a live commentary on the extraordinary skills being displayed. Big Jet TV Live.
It has been a day to marvel at the skills of pilots as they've navigated these extraordinary winds, and following it minute by minute has been Jerry here on Big Jet TV. This is where the skill of the pilot really comes in, earning their salary.
During the worst of the weather, more than 200,000 people were watching on YouTube this minute-by-minute coverage of the landings. Take this flight from Prague at 9:13 this morning. Inside the cabin, a certain hush as it made its approach. And then, touchdown. You could feel the relief.
Very, very skilled individuals. This is where their training and their years of experience, even some, well, I'll say years of experience, some of them are sprogs, aren't they? They're young pilots who haven't been flying for very long, but you know, they do a great job. You can do it! Come on!
Crabbing, vectoring. Jerry's new viewers have been introduced to all sorts of new terms on a day when pilots have truly proved their mettle, and one that many passengers won't forget in a hurry. David Silito, BBC News, Heathrow.
Oh, yeah! Oh!
Ooh, a hard watch. Time for a look at the weather now with Ben Rich, who was glued to this, apparently.
It was this morning, Rita, yes. Not a great day for flying, to say the least. But this was a serious storm, of course, Storm Eunice. It was every bit as severe, every bit as dangerous as we expected it would be, and in fact provisionally it looks like it's brought England its strongest wind gust on record, 122 miles per hour at that very exposed spot on the Needles on the Isle of Wight. Emily Moor, though, in West Yorkshire has seen a gust of 85 miles per hour just in the last couple of hours, so there is still some really strong winds out there. And still across the southern half of the UK we have this Met Office amber warning for the next few hours. I mentioned parts of northern England, also eastern England very windy at the moment. This is the curl of cloud, this is Storm Eunice, and just on the southern flank where you see this hook currently going through parts of eastern England, that's where we still have some really strong winds. We've had a lot of snow today in Scotland as well. Wintry showers continue here, wintry showers even getting down into the south at times, with ice an issue for the northern half of the UK. The winds at least will very slowly ease as we head through this evening and tonight, and temperatures will drop away. Now the weekend looks less severe weather-wise, but there's still plenty of weather going on. Tomorrow we bring this band of rain in from the west, turning to snow over high ground of Wales, North Midlands, northern England, maybe to low levels for a time. Snow for parts of Northern Ireland, maybe southern Scotland if this rain band gets in here. And as it runs along the south coast, it'll be accompanied by gales, but not as windy as it has been today. Quite a range of temperatures north to south, 4 for Aberdeen, 11 for Cardiff and for Plymouth. Now through Saturday night into Sunday, we see another frontal system pushing in from the west. Between these two weather fronts, a wedge of mild air, and where we've had the snow in Scotland today, well, that could start to melt and that could give flooding issues. And further south, it's rain that'll bring the risk of flooding on Sunday. Heavy rain in places, accompanied by strong and gusty winds, gusts of 50, 60 miles per hour, quite notable in themselves. themselves, but after the damage and disruption of today, that will not help the clear-up operation. A very mild day on Sunday. So to sum up this weekend, more wind and rain, but not as severe as it has been. All the weather warnings online. Rita.
Thank you, Ben. A reminder now of our top story. Storm Eunice has hit the UK, damaging properties and causing extensive travel disruption because of powerful winds. And it's just been confirmed that 2 people have been killed in the storms. Well, that is all from BBC News at 6. It's goodbye from me. And on BBC One, we now join the BBC's news teams where you are. Bye-bye.